He first clear thought Ash had as he struggled to open his heavy eyelid was, "I hurt much." Then after a little more struggling and losing the battle with his eyelids, Ash gave up and decided to just rest and wonder why his chest hurt so much. It wasn't only his torso but also his arms, head, legs and possibly even his spleen. But now he was happy to relax on the nice and soft bed. That wasn't his nor was the one at Anabel's house. Not that it really mattered, Ash just wanted to know why, and why did he hurt in the first place. Something to do with Anabel. When thinking her name, his willpower spiked and allowed him to open his eyes. Instantly he regretted it when light poured into his pupils causing him to wince. And now with them open, he could see the blurry shapes of a well-furnished room. But what stood out were the small yellow blob and the big purple blob that rested on his stomach. Wait, those aren't blobs, his mind was starting to sharpen as with his eyes. And the shapes began to take on familiar forms. Pikachu and Anabel rested on him with worried and strained looks. Then he finally recalled his last memory. They were in the forest and two Pokémon shot a hyper beam. Oh right, they aimed at Anabel, had to get her out of way. He winced again slightly when Pikachu fidgeted slightly, but smiled know that they were safe. That's good, he said hoarsely. Abruptly Pikachu and Anabel woke up and eyes widened seeing Ash awake. Pika Pie. Pikachu latched on with all his might around his trainer's neck. But swiftly let go when Ash winced in pain. Gently Anabel picked the electric type off of him. Looking up at her, Ash saw her eyes filled with relief and kindness that just seemed to make the pain go away. Ash was speechless to what to say, especially when she laid her hand on his. Thank goodness you're all right, Ash. She said with relief in every word. We were afraid that you would be out a lot longer. This surprised Ash. How long was I out? He asked with a ting of nervousness. Anabel sighed while putting on tired look. 3 days. She answered quietly as Ash blinked in disbelief. 3 days. How badly was he injured? How bad did he make Pikachu and Anabel worry? Anabel sensed his distressed feelings and quickly tried to soothe them before they caused the trainer more strain. Don't worry. In fact, you recovered quicker than Dr. Eric thought you would. Ash scrunched his eyes in displeasure. Gosh, but still, 3 days wasted, I'm sorry. This caused Anabel and Pikachu to stare at him with shock. Why on earth should you be sorry? She said, startling Ash. I'm the one who should be sorry. If it wasn't for me and my pointless hope that those two Pokémon could possibly consider any other solution than violence, then you wouldn't be in situation in the first place. This baffled Ash. Even he may not be the smartest, but there was no way that made any sense. Okay, first off, how can that be your fault? You told me your powers, Anabel, and none of them had the ability to predict the future. He said a bit sternly. The two trainers stared off at each other almost as if daring the other to apologize. But simultaneously both gazes softened. I'm sorry. They said at the same time. They noticed and started to laugh. Ow, ow, laughing hurts. Ash winced sitting up. He then noticed that dressings covered his whole torso and that his arm was in a sling. Just then Dr. Eric entered the room. He looked at Ash and then to Anabel. Well, I guess you got your wish. He said to her. Anabel blushed a bit, which everyone in the facility noticed. The doctor chuckled. All right then, now if you please, Anabel, I need you and Pikachu to leave while I change Ash's dressings. And will you please go and get something to eat, you two? Both of you look famished. The purple-haired trainer and the electric type both looked a bit sheepish when he said that. But did what he said without much of a fuss. Ash looked at him with confusion. What did you mean by that? Dr. Eric looked at him wistfully. You're a lucky man to have someone like Pikachu and Anabel, Ash. Beckoning the young man to stand up as he continued. Not once had she nor your starter had left your side until I forced them to. And I was only able to do that once. Now hold still, this may sting a bit. He added when he started to peel of the bandages. Ash gritted his teeth. You mean that they have been watching me all this time? For 3 days. Pikachu he could understand, but Anabel. She did all that for him. Believe me, Ash, that was nothing compared to when she first brought you in. He said, still taking off another layer. I heard someone knocking at midnight, and when I fetched the door there she was standing in the pouring rain with mud and sticks caked over her. carrying you over her shoulder unconscious with Pikachu trying desperately to help. Never had I seen anyone's eyes burn with determination like that. I started to operate on you and immediately Anabel and Pikachu insisted that they help. I tried to tell them to rest but I could not convince those two otherwise. Once I was able to tell them that your condition was stable and you were going to be alright. They both collapsed right then and there. Ash's eyes widened. You mean they were just running on pure adrenaline? More like pure willpower. Dr. Eric said. And since then they haven't left your side. Even when after Marin, Sept, Jed and all the Pokémon came and left. This revelation touched Ash's heart. He could not believe that they went through all of that for him. That sheer dedication was overwhelming to him. Never in all his life had anyone, not even his friends, had shown that much worry. But maybe it's not just friendship. The young trainer thought to himself. They're all done. Dr. Eric said when he finished unraveling the dressing. Looking down, Ash couldn't help but cringe. On him were some pretty nasty burns with a little bit of blood leaking out. Almost like angry red fire snakes, they wrapped around his body. Yikes. Dr. Eric nodded. Indeed. But they were much worse when I first saw them. You are very lucky you have your tough skin ability, Ash, because it would have probably taken you longer to wake up or worse. What's worse? Quote. You may have not woken up at all. Ash shuddered when he realized how close he came and then realized how much he owed to Anabel and Pikachu dedication to him. And while Dr. Eric applied new bandages to him, Ash stayed silent, overwhelmed by Anabel's kindness. Ash always knew his buddy, Pikachu would always be with him, thick and thin. But here was Anabel, a human and a girl who he only knew for only a month. She had done a lot for him. From helping him get his fire back to saving his life. Matter of fact, she had done more for him in this short amount of time than most people he had met had done in a year. And yet she never said a thing about a thank you or anything in return. Anabel just smiles no matter what. When the doctor was done, Ash settled back under the covers to relax and ponder about this new development. Alone and quiet, he was able to actually think about his relationship with Anabel. He didn't get too far when the door came open. Jed the Aura Philosopher, Marin the Battle Tower Coach, and Sept the frequent Battle Tower participant, came huffing in with smile on their faces. We heard, Marin gasped. From Anabel that you, Jed continued. We're awake. Sept finished. This was surprising to say at least when Ash's brain managed to catch up to what happened. What are you guys doing here? He asked, obviously confused. Before he knew it, the three men surrounded the bed he sat in. What a question to ask. Jed smirked. We were all worried about you, Ash. From what Anabel told us, you should still be knocked out like a Snorlax. The dark-skinned boy, Sept, said. You might have forgotten Ash, but Anabel isn't the only person here who's your friend. These words touched Ash. He had been so focused at becoming a battle frontier that he didn't realize that Anabel friends became his as well. It had been subtle, unlike his other friendships that were spontaneous and instant, however this didn't matter. What did was the fact that they also liked him enough to come and visit. The boys demanded an explanation to what happened on the night he was hurt. When Ash asked why, the other three told him that Anabel refused to speak about it. She's been really worried about you. Marin told him. Ash's brows furrowed. Yeah, I'll know. Dr. Eric told me that she hadn't left the room unless he forced her to go. The three boys nodded, then Jed spoke up. He's got that right. And if I didn't know any better, but of course I do, I would say that Anabel blames herself for this incident. The younger trainer's eyes budged out here this the second time. But that's crazy, why would she do that? I mean, why does she think this way? Anabel had nothing to do with his choice. Clearly she must have interpreted something wrong. Sept looked at Ash softly. Ah, but you don't know Anabel as much as we do, Ash. Beneath that tough, gentle and confident exterior beats a heart of a shy, sensitive and doubtful girl. This is not the first time she has taken the blame of someone else's misfortune. Well then I'll convince her. Ash said with a determined expression in his dual-colored eyes. I got to clear this up. He tried to get out of bed but the other three and slightly stronger boys easily held him in place. Whoa. Hang on, Ash. Marin said. You're not going anywhere unless the doctor gives you the clear. Yeah, and before you go blabbering something insensitive, use this time to think what you might need to say to her. The wise aura philosopher stated. Reluctantly, Ash settled back down and discussed among the men about what he had missed on the days out. To his surprise, they told him who his other visitors were. Mr. Vaughn from the bakery, the guy he met when he first came to Cobalt Town, some wild Pokémon, and to his greatest surprise, Scott. You mean Scott is here? Was here. They corrected him. Being a busy man, Scott couldn't stay for long, though the portly man stated very clear to everyone that he was very concerned over Ash's well-being. But before he left, he discussed something with Anabel in private. This left Ash wondering what this was. Do you think he is going to fire Anabel? Ash said with anxiety in his voice. PFF'd. Nah. Scott wouldn't lay Anabel off even if the fate of the world depended on it. Sept assured Ash with Marin backing him up. Sept's right, Ash. Anabel, though young, is the second toughest member of the battle frontier. She's too valuable to lose. Still, the younger trainer was left with a bit of doubt when his friends took their leave. But right after they left, Anabel, carrying Pikachu with Espeon by her side, calmly walked in. Now that he was focused, Ash could see the dark rings and bags underneath their eyes. They had exhausted themselves at his sake. But despite of this, the two smiled warmly at him. Did they give you any trouble? Anabel referred to the three men while Pikachu and Espeon hopped on Ash's bed. Ash grinned back. I'm fine. The guys were really nice. And I'm thankful that you sent them my way. He started to pet Pikachu before continuing. But please tell me, why do you blame yourself for this? He gestured to the wrappings on his torso. He watched as Anabel's eyes went from concerned to slightly frustrated. Sometimes I really wish Jed wasn't so observant. She huffed, looking away from the injured trainer. When she glanced back, Ash was staring at her like a parent would to make a child tell the truth. I guess they told you I'm not always the confident salon maiden, right? She sighed when Ash nodded. Pikachu listened avidly. Whole Espeon looked concerned. Since you know I am really sensitive to emotions, but it goes both ways. Whenever I feel, say, nervous or sad, I can get easily overwhelmed with these emotions. Ash quirked an eyebrow. Okay, but you never seem to be overwhelmed. Well, at least for as long as I had been here. He observed when she smiled ruefully. That's because I took some training to control them. And normally I can control them. But something changed to where you can't always control them. Ash said in one of the rare moments he shows insight. Pika Pika Kachu Pika. The electric type, asked the purple-haired girl. Well, no, it doesn't normally happen, Pikachu. And it is something I can't fix. Just learn to regain my control. Then maybe we can fix it. Ash stated with Pikachu agreed. What is it that's bothering you? Ash, I really don't want to say. Anabel. Come on, Ash, you need rest and I can't be bothering you. Anabel. The salon maiden sighed in defeat. You're not going to give up, are you? No. Some say I'm particularly stubborn when it comes to the well-being of my friends. He smirked. Pikachu and Espeon giggled at the joke and even Anabel smiled a bit. Alright, I'll tell you, and please don't take this the wrong way, Ash. She said, cringing slightly. Ash smirked. Anabel, after all of this, nothing you can say can shock me, really. He said confidently. Anabel shrugged. If you say so. The problem? It's you. Silence. Normally Ash would have asked for her to repeat in case he didn't hear right. But how could he not when she was right next to him? And also normally, once confirmed that he did hear right, the common reaction for him was to budge his eyes out and yell. But being the recently matured and injured version of him, Ash simply deadpanned and said. What? More silence filled the room as both trainers stood, or sat, in a stare-off. Both having disbelieving thoughts about the other. Hey, you asked? Anabel said to him with a nonchalant shrug of her shoulder. Hi. Esp. The Pokémon said in agreement. Yeah, but why? Getting over the initial shock of hearing the problem as him, Ash was now curious as to why he was the cause to her loss of control emotions. Quickly he worried that it was because he did something wrong, then if he did, then he started to wonder how he could fix it. As if reading his mind, Anabel quickly corrected his thoughts. It's not really something you can correct, Ash. It's nothing wrong, it's just that you set me on edge. Her heart slightly fluttered when he cast her a concerned and hurt look. I'm not holding anything against you, Ash. All it is that you just simply are a change to my, relatively normal organized life. Just give me some time to adjust to this new change. However, Ash had different thoughts. Considering she had a month to adjust to his presence, there had to be something else involved to make her so uneasy. But he kept quiet and decided to approach the subject when she was feeling less guilty about this whole fiasco. The next day, Dr. Eric gave Ash the clear to leave. However, before he could depart, Ash found out that he had a bit of a dilemma to deal with first. What happened to my cloths? Ash yelled at the top of his lungs while Pikachu sat on the bed laughing his tail off. Dr. Eric cringed at the volume. Ash, they were absolutely destroyed when you suffered the dual hyper beam. Your skin may be tougher than the average human, but you cloths are the exception. Ash sighed. Alright, but was anything salvageable? My shirt. The doctor shook his head. My pants. Another negative. My hat. Afraid not. The doctor said before leaving Ash to his lost. Soon the trainer's eye was twitching. Even his precious hat was gone. How was he going to get out of this mess of all things? Tired of thinking of his current predicament, with a sigh the train sat back down on the bed. His emotions in turmoil, it didn't help that Pikachu was still giggling despite of Electric type's attempt to stifle it. But like the shining ray of light and hope she represent, Anabel just came through the door to fix that problem. In her arms was an outfit. In surprise, the trainer got up to see what she had exactly. It was a blue and white version of Marin's clothes. Thoughts started to wonder on how she got such a thing. Anabel blushed lightly, while slightly shrugging. Since I had seen your state of attire when I carried you from the attack, I asked Marin to lend some of his old outfits to help you out. She paused a bit, which is not surprising how embarrassed she was about talking about the subject. They're just your size, she said before shoving them into Ash's arms, then quickly leaving so the slightly bemused and baffled trainer could get dressed. After shutting the door behind her, a great sigh escaped her lips. This wasn't going to well. Anabel had no idea that Ash would attract trouble like a honey does to a comby. It was a chore just to keep him alive. And what's worse was that thanks to that little incident, her feelings towards that cutely thick-headed trainer had, well, intensified. Seriously, who wouldn't develop affectionate feelings for someone who had gallantly, or not so gallantly for then Anabel remembered that Ash accidentally shoved her in a puddle of mud when taking the attack for himself saved them from almost certain doom. Anabel mentally groaned. And now Ash is asking questions that relate to how I feel about him. In all honesty, she hoped that the day improved from here on. When Ash came out on a crutch and sling followed by Pikachu, the salon maiden cast away her thoughts on her own dilemma to help him out. She smiled slightly when Ash gave her a nervous face and asked, "How do I look?" "Not bad." She shrugged. But in all reality, with tan slacks, a white button dress shirt and a blue vest with silver lining, the usually raggedy trainer looked absolutely spiffing. "Where's Espeon?" Ash asked when he looked his friends. Could she really be called his friend now? The term seemed so insignificant. Starter Pokémon. Already at the battle tower, she's observing with Marin over the battlers. She said when they headed out the door. Pika Pai Pika Kachu Pai Chu. The electric type perked up when he heard this. Both trainers understood that the mouse Pokémon wanted to see his friend, as the two had made it a habit to explore the 100 floors of the tower. "Isn't that your job?" Ash asked Anabel when Pikachu left. He was referring to the fact that a Pokémon was supervising a building full of rowdy trainers. Her answer was surprising and yet expected. "That is my job. However, I have another one that is more important right now, taking care of you." Ash wanted to disagree with that. He could take care of himself right now, but her tone left no argument. Living a month with her had taught Ash that she could be far more stubborn when she set her mind to something. So with an aggravated huff that is akin to a wallard shooting water out of its spout, he dropped the subject. But the awkward tension still existed between them. Who could blame them really? The week so far had been very stressful, from one of them to nearly dying, another overexerting herself to the point of sickness, one losing his favorite hat and the other nearly unintentionally forced to tell her feelings. Needless to say that the day couldn't possibly be any worse. On the other hand, fate has always hated Ash. Quickly before they could realize what was going on, Out in the blue, literally from the lake blue, a mechanical claw shot out and grabbed the closest thing to the body of water. Which just happened to be Anabel. Before they knew it, she was in the grasp of the machine while it rose out of water. A big fat red R was smack dab on the front. Anabel. Ash screamed seeing her being taken away. Ah and DD. Theme music. Ha ha ha. Look out. Here comes the tide. Crashing in and sweeping you aside. Bring destruction and ruin across the plain. Hold on tight now, you're going to be in pain. Cassidy. Butch. Shuckle. They struck a pose. Filling this world with fire is our quest. Don't try to stop us because Team Rocket is the best. Ash gritted his teeth after hearing the annoying theme song. It was those two again. Man, why can't Team Rocket just ever leave him alone? But they crossed the line when they got Anabel into their mess. Hey! Ash yelled with all his might, even though he knew he couldn't look very threatening with bandages wrapped around him while he leaned on a crutch. Leave her alone. Butch and Cassidy looked towards the source of the voice. They looked startled as if they just realized he was there for the first time. Oh, look the twerp. Cassidy said with mild interest. Butch nodded. Who knew? And they went back to ignoring him. Baffled and angry, Ash yelled at them again, this time getting a bit more of response. Listen punk, we don't have time for you. Butch yelled back at the trainer. But don't worry, as soon as we deliver this delightful oddity of a human to the boss, we'll be sure to come back for that particular Pikachu of yours. Cassidy said with a malicious grin. Almost magically, Butch wiped out a remote and pressed buttons in a seemingly random order. It caused the arm that our dear Salon Maiden was trapped in over to the villainous duo. You can say that Anabel was not pleased being captured like this. Feeling helpless and angry that she was called an oddity, it wasn't any surprise when she nearly spat out an insult. Slime. She said it like it was nearly a curse. Though this made Team Rocket slightly mad, they were not deterred from the task at hand. And with a few more buttons, the giant machine started to stomp off away from the shore, having Anabel become farther and farther away from Ash. Not if he could say anything about it. It was that moment, at that time, at that place, our thick-headed trainer had an epiphany. Such clarity shone through his eyes when it happened, nothing could have been simpler. He needed Anabel. Maybe those exact words weren't what he thought, maybe it was more a feeling than anything else, but the intention was the same. He had to save her. No matter what. Disregarding his injuries, disregarding that he was practically crippled, and even completely disregarding that the fact he was facing a giant robot, with two criminals who probably had a lot of powerful Pokémon at their disposal while he had none, Ash lunged towards the mech. And time slowed down as if Dialga himself had ordered it so. Every moment, Ash could see himself getting closer. Anabel prayed that he wouldn't get hurt. Team Rocket just smiled evilly, silently laughing at Ash's foolish attempt to rescue her. Our hero's hopes were quickly dashed and the villains rose, when Ash started to slow to a decline. Despite of this, Ash couldn't give up. No, I have to save her. And so his wish was granted. In the same amount of time it took to blink an eye, it was the same amount that changed the whole entire situation. Yera. From the lake, between the mecha and the falling trainer, water rose forth as if boiling under pressure. Ash was engulfed by the foaming liquid, casting him away from sight. Anabel yelled for his name. And before Team Rocket knew it, when the water cleared, they were staring at a pair of very large and very angry eyes. Like the mighty serpent it was, the Gyarados hissed menacingly at the intruders who dared disrupt his waters. But this wasn't their only crime. As you see, this was the same Gyarados that Anabel and Ash met a year ago when it had a thorn stuck in its side. Ever since then, in gratitude, it had secretly watched and protected the Salon Maiden from any danger that would ever cross her way. And now these two foolish humans will face its wrath. Yar-Ra. In one mighty swoop of its tail, the arm that restrained the purple-haired girl snapped like a toothpick. In another swift motion, the great beast halted the girl's fall. But then in retaliation, Team Rocket's mech slammed the other claw into the dual water flying type's head. But to the villain's dismay, it hardly affected Gyarados, only serving to fill it with more rage. Seeing their efforts futile, in a last-ditch effort the Rocket duo had the giant robot turn around to flee the battle. But those who have raised or encountered Gyarados themselves know how particularly persistent these creatures are. So it was no surprise to see energy and water form in its mouth before it released an overpowered hydro pump. The attack crashed in the machine and then everything was history from there. Smoking as they flew through the sky, we hear the last words from these defeated foes. "Oh come on," Cassidy yelled. "Now the author gives us lines. We barely had any when we were winning. What kind of show are you putting on here? Well, that's what we get for becoming part of a crappy fanfiction." Butch grunted. "Looks like Team Rocket is blasting off for the second time in this story." Shuckle. Twinkle. Back at the Gyarados, Anabel soon found that Ash had landed on the Rage Pokémon when he fell. But even though he landed safely, his bandages had gotten wet while his wounds reopened. Ash felt her hand try to pick him up, but he couldn't prevent the noise that came out of him. "Ah!" he groaned in pain, as she slowly dragged him from the Pokémon's back to the shore. Anabel winced when he did. "Sorry Ash. But I need to get you to dry land." When they did get to land, Ash noticed something which Anabel could not see. Ignoring his pain, he pointed behind them. "Wait." Turning around, Anabel saw that the Gyarados was still watching them. And being the sensitive type, or in her case beyond sensitive, she knew what it wanted, and so did Ash when he nodded to have her set him down. "Thank you," she said, walking up to the giant creature. "I and Ash owe you our life." Gyarados let out a grunt as if to say, "You're welcome," but there was something in its eyes that told Anabel a deeper story. "You want to join me?" Another grunt which told her yes. "Okay, but why?" Instead of saying anything, the Gyarados lowered its head, until it touched the ground on her feet. For such a large and powerful creature that existed in the Pokémon world, this bowing itself before a human meant a sign of respect, that the human was strong as well. And whilst all of this happened, something else clicked in Ash's mind. A small smile dotted her lips. "Well, if you say so." Conveniently, she had an empty Pokéball, and allowed Gyarados to be captured by the red light. The Pokéball gave a shake 3 times before the sound of a successful capture filled the air. As Anabel helped the limping Ash back to the house, they were silent once more. Maybe it was because there was nothing to talk about, or it could have been that they were so exhausted from the day's events that they were conserving energy. But the most likely reason to why no words passed through their lips is because subconsciously they knew as soon as one opened their mouths, it was going to change the way they viewed one another. So Ash thought. All of last night, Pikachu slept at the foot of the bed, and he had been thinking and thinking as that was all he could do while the painkillers rendered his body almost immobile. In that time he had come to several conclusions about Anabel. Conclusion number 1. Anabel was a young woman. Not a girl like most of the female gender he had met on his numerous of journeys, but someone who could and has fended for themselves and is mature to know both the bad and good parts of life. Someone who is able to take his brash personality and put it to good use while not getting angry or even frustrated. Conclusion number 2. Anabel was his equal. Not a caretaker, role model, an inexperienced friend, elder, younger kid, or brotherly or sisterly figure. Though she had taught him a lot about Pokémon, being a battle brain and about life in general, it never felt as though she acknowledged about her superior intellect. It was never demeaning learning from her, and it was actually great fun. Which leads him to the next conclusion. Conclusion number 3. Anabel was full of life. She was sweet, kind and caring like his mom, but full of inner fire that made her one of the most challenging opponents on the battlefield. The Salon Maiden experimented with new things, made friends in her own way and embraced new ideas. Never did she unfairly judge things that were odd or strange, but instead looked at them for what they were, just like him. Another thing was that Anabel could do things no human could. She can befriend the wildest and most vicious of Pokémon, walk in the woods at night without fear and communicate into the mysterious creatures' hearts. Conclusion number 4. All of this meant that Anabel had become a very, very special person to him, more so than anyone else, except probably his mother and Pikachu. And this equaled conclusion number 5, friendship wasn't enough. He needed Anabel especially when he came close to losing her this day. And while Ash thought, Anabel thought, she nearly lost Ash twice in the same week. What if the third time he wasn't so lucky? And if that did happen, what's worse, tell him now and possibly face rejection or never knowing whether or not he did return those feelings. Her thoughts turned to an old proverb. Love is giving someone the power to hurt you and trusting them not to. And the answer became clear. But first I need to give Ash proper care. His needs before mine. And so they arrived at the foot of her house, when Rook the Blaziken came out with some bandages before they could even get through the door. A quick explanation from him told Anabel that wild Pokémon had seen the situation from previous and quickly went to the Elder Fire type to help. It was of great relief to have the fighting type help out with removing and reapplying the dressings back on. Already did the Pikachu trainer seemed better already with the sun drying him off as they closed the wounds. In an act of kindness, Rook took Ash back to the house to rest while Anabel stayed out. Not being able to help herself, the salon maiden sat against the side of her house, tired from the day's events. And slowly dozed off. Anabel. Her eyes opened quickly hearing her name uttered. When she did, the sun was setting and Ash was there right beside her. She yawned a bit, and cringed, her back stiff from sitting at a 95-degree angle all afternoon. Anabel. Ash asked again for the seconded time. Finally was she able to respond back. What is it, Ash? What are you doing out here? Worry was etched in his features. It wasn't like her to be so distracted like this. Then again, they both had gone through a lot in a short time. Thinking, was her simple response. A small smile came across Ash's face that didn't quite reach his eyes. Think that's all we seem to be doing today, when we're not facing perilous dangers that is. The two laughed lightly at the joke, reveling in the fact that they can laugh like this. But the time had come. Hey Anabel, I need to ask you something. She didn't notice the way he said his words. Actually Ash, can I tell you something first? He looked surprised by this. Sure. Taking a deep breath, Anabel prepared to plunge into a pit with no bottom. Ash, you are a remarkable person. Able to take on Pokémon attacks, saving people no matter what and a fun attitude to boot. She paused for a bit to let the words sink in for the both of them. You have been the greatest friend I have had. But, I feel. I dunno really, more than that. The salon maiden waited for an answer. When it was just silence she continued. I really don't know how I feel about you really, but I really like you, more than a friend. Anabel. The girl kept her face impassive, she didn't know what was to come next. Yes Ash. When she turned her head, she saw the softest expression on Ash's face. His dual-colored eyes were joyful. You just answered my question. He looked up to the beautiful sky. I really like you too Anabel. He paused for a moment before chuckling. It's funny, I never felt like this for anyone before, but, when it comes to you, it feel like friendship isn't enough. Turning back to her he saw her smile, not hugely or sadly but something that meant more than any other word. And he knew that, they liked each other more than friends. They both remained in silence, just basking in the revelation. So, what do we do now? Anabel asked. Ash looked at her with confusion. I dunno exactly, aren't we supposed to do something romantic? Anabel laughed. After today, romance is the last thing from my mind. Besides I don't know how to do that exactly. It was his turn to laugh as well. It's funny, we're top-notch Pokémon trainers that rival adults when we're kids, but neither of us know the first thing when it come to be, well, liked. His eyes widened when he felt Anabel's hand hold his softly. I think, she said. This is nice enough. No words were spoken after that. They didn't need any at that moment. All they really needed at that moment was each other. 1 month and a half after the initiation. Some would say it was the best of times and the worst of times, but in reality it was just a plain good time for our two heroes and their Pokémon. No longer was there awkward and unnecessary tension between the two and no longer did they have to stare at one another wondering what to do next. Ash and Anabel were a couple to say at least. But of course you would never hear that from them. That isn't to say that the relationship was perfect, far from it. It was not romantic as some might think nor was it stressful. They didn't bother to make it complicated. It was a simple affection, one born of not knowing if this was love or not as you would expect from two teenagers without any previous experience. There was no kissing or even a peck on a cheek. Hugs were the farthest they have gone, and that was enough for them. But if for one moment that you would think that would quench the fire in their eyes and dull their instincts for battle, dear reader, then you are sorely mistaken. For you see, Ash and Anabel were trainers far before they met each other. Like Pokémon, battling was in their blood, and it was their way of expressing their feelings with each other. They didn't need words or the reassurance that their partner loved them. They knew what the other felt, and they were perfectly fine with that. But unfortunately, the excitement that was felt in previous weeks had to die down as Ash recovered from his injuries. Battling and training was reduced to small practices, and aura training was cancelled as Jed said that Ash needed to be in tip-top shape for it. But this left plenty of time for the young Pikachu trainer to learn the other side of being a battle brain. Paperwork. Gah! Ash yelled before flopping his head in the desk. I'm going to get an ulcer if I have to do one more file of complaints. Pika, his starter, patted his head trying to comfort the poor human. Both of them waited with bated breath for when he got better. Anabel looked at her good friend and recently turned boyfriend. Of course they never addressed each other as they both thought it completely unnecessary of such trivial titles, not to mention it was just plain awkward to say it, and sighed. Sorry Ash, but until those bandages come off, the battles are off. The darker-skinned boy groan was muffled by his face in the desk. Come on Anabel. I will snap if something doesn't happen. He once again flopped his face, this time into his hands. And though a scowl dotted his face then, he started to smile when Anabel gave him a small yet affectionate noogie. Don't tell me the almighty Ash Ketchum, the champion of the battle frontier, is going to lose to simple boredom. Ash grinned slightly. When it comes to me in boredom, I would rather face Arceus with no Pokémon than having to go through several weeks of this cursed feeling of helplessness. Of course it doesn't help that the fact that I have faced Arceus as myself, but he kept that thought to himself as, well, that would just be weird, even for someone like Anabel. He watched her smile gleefully and in return smiled back. Work wasn't so bad. With Anabel, these things seemed minuscule. Life with a girlfriend was exciting. A new challenge, and hopefully it will turn into something he didn't know, deeper. Hopefully it will become more fun when he can get out of these stupid bandages. But his attention was quickly distracted when he saw his Pikachu gave out a huge yawn. A pang of guilt washed through him then. It wasn't fair that while he was out that Pikachu had to suffer the same fate even though the electric type wasn't hurt. He patted Pikachu on the head smiling and said, "Hey, why don't you go out to have some fun, buddy?" Hi. Ka. The mouse Pokémon looked at him oddly, tilting his head a bit confused. He's right, Pikachu. Anabel joined in, understanding what Ash was getting at. Go out and play. We'll handle things here, okay? Finally understanding, the electric type gave out a huge grin and affectionately hugs both trainers before leaping down the elevator to explore a adventure. Finally getting off, quickly he ran towards Anabel's house where all the Pokémon were at for the day. As fast as his little paws could carry him, he saw the sun Pokémon talking to Rook the Blaziken. Hearing Pikachu, they both turned their heads and acknowledged the electric type. Hey guys. Pikachu said. Ash let me off for the day so we can play together now. That sounds great, Pikachu. Espeon said with glee, however Rook was uninterested. You youngins, always looking for ways to entertain yourselves. He said in his gravelly voice. Ah, come on Rook, what's wrong with that? The electric type asked jokingly. The elder Pokémon shot him a glance before saying, Boy, when you get to be as old as me, you don't need entertainment. Just food, sleep and battle. And speaking of which, a great yawn escaped his beak. I think I will just do that. Both of the younger Pokémon sighed, seeing the Blaziken fall into a deep slumber. I don't know about you, but I'm not too keen growing up to be like Rook. Pikachu whispered to Espeon, making sure not to wake Rook up. Sure, he's strong, but he is as boring as a full Gulpin. Espeon giggled at the joke. Well then, let's use our youthfulness to explore the lake. I want to see the Gyarados that Mistress Anabel caught. Her tone was excited at the prospect. And like his friend, Pikachu was too interested in seeing the dual flying water type. This would be a good chance to see one up close without having to battle it for once. When you with Anabel, you can do things that one might normally could. He thought with a smile. And so, being both small and speedy, the two raced across the acres of grass and forest. In the side were the shimmering waves of the lake reflecting the sunlight like a giant mirror of crystal. Faster and faster they ran, both almost reaching the speed of quick attack. And like Ash's and Anabel's experience with each other, the two Pokemon's time spent together was nice, but lacked the awkward tension that the humans had. Soon they could see the silhouette of Gyarados head out of the lake. And the closer they came, the more the color of aqua blue and coral yellow began to fill the water-type's scales and fins. This wasn't the only thing they saw, a small lump laid on the ground in front of it. When it occurred to him that he had company, the serpent turned its giant head towards the tiny little Pokémon on the land. You are the mistress, Pokémon, Espeon. The Gyarados voice was slow and deep, showing power and great inner strength. He gave a short bow of respect to the purple Pokémon as she was his mistress starter. This one, he addressed to the lump on the ground, completely ignoring Pikachu, I might add. I found him like this. Pikachu and Espeon walked over to it and lo and behold it was a Spinda. But oddly enough, instead of the cream fur with orange dots, this one was unique with silver fur and blue dots that almost reflected sunlight like gems. Can any think of anything similar that does that? Well, this is odd. Pikachu said plainly. His partner nodded in agreement, unable to say anything at the moment. Sudden to their surprise, the Spinda sat up and let out a yelp when it saw the two of them with the Gyarados above them. Ep, he said, jumping up in the air. Then awkwardly it relaxed and leaned over as to observe the three. What are you doing? Pikachu asked. The strange behavior of this Pokémon was weirding him out. Then again, Spinda aren't exactly known to have normal patterns of behavior due to their reputation to be overly dizzy all the time. Spinda ignored him, putting a finger on his chin while murmuring, I didn't think he didn't mean to throw me this far, he said in a slightly squeaky and young voice. Finally Espeon had the courage to ask. Excuse me, but how did you get here? The Spinda did a startled take, and almost fell back, but then toppled forward. Standing back up he said. Well, I flew of course. He said with pride. Flew? Gyarados said with disbelief evident in his voice. Yep. Spinda said before thinking about what he said. Well, that's what you call when you're traveling in the air after being thrown for a training practice. With missing a beat Espeon asked if he was alright with concern in her voice. The blue Spinda just smiled with flexing his tiny arms. Don't worry about little me Miss Espeon. I'm tough as a cookie. Considering that this conversation wasn't going anywhere, Pikachu decided to be blunt. Why are you blue? That is a secret. He said with a mysterious smile on his face. Now, I must find where I came from. He looked around quickly. I think that general direction will be good. He said, pointing to the east. Pikachu and Espeon stared oddly at the erratic Spinda while he walked off. You have no idea where you're going, do you? Nope. La, he said, causing Espeon to sigh. We better go help him. She voiced the thoughts that her electric-type partner was having. See you later, Gyarados, she said to the giant Pokémon before following the normal type. Back at the battle tower's entrance, Ash let out a huge sigh of relief when he stepped outside. The cool breeze, the smell of the lake near the sea, the slight sound of the Pokémon life in the woods, did wonders to his physique. It was as though nature itself was curing him while he stood there in its midst. But the real reason why he was feeling good was because he no longer had to deal with the stupid complaints that had been plaguing him. But then Ash frowned a bit. Anabel was still up there trying to deal with her own paperwork, and it made him felt bad for enjoying this day without her despite of her instance that he went outside to get some fresh air. Ash refused to go out while she was still trapped inside, but the salon maiden happened to be far more stubborn than he was that day, and practically dragged him out, laughing when his face turned bright red when she grabbed his hand. He couldn't do anything to stop her, of course, due to his injuries. Our hero ran a hand over his hair, blushing a bit at the memory. Though dense, Ash had enough experience to feel the affection of a simple holding of hands. And he also wasn't dense enough to realize that making a treat for someone you like would also show affection as he headed back to the house with determination to make Anabel happy. Wonder what she likes. He thought, cranking the gears in his head about any indicator that could give him a clue. To his surprise, when he looked up, he saw someone standing at the door in front of Anabel's cottage. Surprise turned into confusion as when Ash got nearer, he realized that he could almost recognize the silhouette of the person. And confusion turned into shock when he saw clearly who it was. Mom! He practically yelled, causing his mother to realize that his son was in her presence. Delia Ketchum let out her trademark smile, seeing her boy before walking over. Hello to you too, Ash. She giggled before frowning slightly. My, Scott was right about your injuries, they will take some time to heal. She said with a slight sigh. Ash's eyes widened, realizing that she could see them, and tried to quickly stop any misconceptions. Mom, it's not like that. I did it out of my own free will. He stopped. Wait, Scott told you. Of course, how do you think I knew where to look? She said, giving a blunt reply. I know everything that is going on right now, the conditions required, what you need to do, and especially who you are learning from. She paused. Is she nice? Ash could feel heat rising on his cheeks before he could answer. Yes, Anna, she is very nice. One of the nicest people I ever met. He looked towards his mother, hoping she wouldn't notice his awkward behavior. Though there was no indication that she did, it still didn't put him at ease. Can you walk with me, Ash? This is such a pretty place. She didn't wait for an answer when she started to walk. And giving no answer, her son walked alongside her. It was then that he realized a development that had happened to him at his time at the battle tower. He had grown taller. A lot taller. He was almost at his mother's height right now, but that didn't make sense. His clothes didn't feel any shorter, but they were Marin's old cloths. Maybe he grew when he was in Dr. Eric's house resting his injuries. His musing was interrupted when Ash realized that his mom was talking to him. Sorry, Mom, but what did you just say? Delia smiled a bit more. You seem deep in thought. I'm guessing that this is a recent habit you've developed. Ash could feel sweat on his brow. Yeah, I have been thinking a lot these days. A bit unusual, heh. He was nervous because he didn't want his mom to get a bad impression of Anabel. It wasn't her fault he got injured, he took it out of his own free will. Though he felt his stomach plummet when her smile widened and hearing her next words. You like her, don't you? She watched her son's jaw dropped in surprise and his pupils shrink hearing the accusation. Wah, why how? Did I know? Delia gave a reassuring squeeze to his hand. It's hard to hide that type of thing from your mother, you know, especially counting the fact that she must have made such an impact that she can change your usual way of thinking. Ash sighed, agreeing. Yeah, Anabel does that to you. What is she like? His mom asked as they continued walking. She observed her son get a bit of a hazy gaze, and a small but obviously happy smile that perked on his face. She's not like many girls I know. Misty, May and Dawn are great and all, but Anabel. He said with his voice rising with pride. She's nice, smart, and, well, great. Ash struggled to find the right words. I mean, Anabel can do amazing things, and she is not afraid to pursue new ideas and try them. She likes all types of Pokémon and exploring with me in the woods. She always makes sure that the battle tower participants are doing okay, and she liked chocolate cake and. He stopped, realizing his mom was giggling at him, clutching her mouth to stop the onslaught of her amusement from being too obvious. Mom? He asked. Delia stopped, but still had a huge smile that reached her eyes. I would have never thought that I would see you this way so soon. Ash quirked an eyebrow. What way? You, Ash, sound absolutely love-struck. This made our hero blush at the comment. You have certainly grown up, Ash, in only a month no less. Ash blinked. I'm assuming that's a good thing, right? His voice slightly nervous. Of course it is, Ash. Delia told her son. She turned her head to where there was some wild Pokémon playing together. I'm so proud how much my little man has grown. Mom. Ash could feel another blush rising, this time from his mother's compliment. She was silent, simply observing her surroundings. It was Ash who restarted the conversation. I never really got to thank you properly, Mom. For what? A smile appeared on her son's face. For helping make this choice, to become a battle brain. If I hadn't, I would have never known what it would be like to have someone to care for. Anabel has helped me so much, more so than I would have ever thought possible. But that's what a relationship is about, right? Helping and encouraging each other in their time of need no matter what. Delia looked at her son. Her face was calm but her eyes shined at his statement. Yes, but so much more which eventually figure out the more time you spend with her. He smiled, then noticing her circling around him. What's the matter, Mom? You hair, she started to say. Her motherly instincts were starting to take over as she now observed her son's state. Why is it so unruly, Ash? I know you like to live rough, but you've always managed to take care of it in the past. She started to reach for his face intending to wipe it away. Ash backed up slightly remembering his anchor eye. Now wait Mom, I have to tell you. Honestly Ash, how can you say? Ash. He gulped now that she could see his unnatural glowing blue eye that replaced his amber one. Why yes. He asked nervously. How did you get your aura anchor? Realization shot through him. Wait. How do you know about aura? His mother gave off an unusual expression, her voice now a bit clipped. Who do you think you got your genes from? Wait. You can use aura. But how come I have never seen you use it? Ash thought back to his life for any indication that his mother had this mysterious power that had now become a focus in his life. Nothing came up though. His mother shook her head as if trying to ward off a bad memory. Just because I have the potential to use it doesn't mean I did. Neither did your grandfather, however, he did pass down the knowledge of us having it down to me. Are you angry with me? Our hero asked, worried that he might have to unlearn everything. But a small amount of relief came when his mother sighed. No, I'm fine with you learning this, but Ash. What? Just don't let it consume your life. She paused for a bit. My father used to tell me stories of other aura users that had their lives so wrapped up in developing their powers that they soon forgotten about life itself. Ash's eyes widened and then shook his head vigorously. No. Don't worry about me, Mom. He showed off his signature grin, telling her that everything was fine. I don't think I can ever be like that. I'm not some old guy who obsesses about things. I love my life as a Pokémon trainer too much to do that. Aura is just something I learned to help me widen my surroundings. And like a son loving his mother, he grasped her hand. Besides, I'm growing up and I don't think I can live so wrapped up in one part of life. I enjoy living and everything about it. And it was apparent to his mother that she indeed not worry about him. Though his physical state has changed, he was still her little Ash at the core. That's good to hear. And yes, I can see that you are growing up to be a fine young man indeed. Mother and son hugged in a rare moment of affection, probably out of the fact that it has truly been a while since they have with Ash traveling so much. Though I am curious, who taught you? She said, putting a finger on her chin. Ash smirked a bit, not at his mother but in memory of the erratic aura philosopher. Yeah, the guy's name is Jed Stone, calls himself an aura philosopher. He's a friend of Anabel's and so far he's been pretty nice. His mother smiled and laughed a bit. He wondered why she would laugh until she said, Stone. Oh, I'm so glad you finally met you cousin Ash. This halted our hero, so suddenly in fact that he face planted on the ground. Getting up, the reaction was spontaneous. Who how why? Despite of her son's outburst and obvious discomfort, a small amount of humor was still in her voice. Well, distant cousin of course, probably 3 times removed. The Stones and my family were once the same in the past, but before my father decided to leave, we always managed to keep close ties. Really now, if we were still with the aura community and if you were a girl you probably would have been married to him. She said without heeding much notice to her son's mortification. Wah! Poor Ash was so scared that his eyes started twitching and he was unaware of all that was around him until. Why? Why did I need to hear that? Jed's voice came from afar. To his left were Jed and his Nidoking, who seemingly took an innocent walk in the forest that day, heard everything as well. He sported the same look as his now discovered cousin, at the thought of what was just said. Not wanting this to be any more awkward, Ash tried to speak up but was silenced by Jed's hand. No. The aura philosopher said firmly. Just don't. Now if you excuse me, I will now leave and start repressing this memory before I have nightmares tonight. Nothing was said when he walked off. So that's what he looks like. Delia said, who was still smiling. Whether she was oblivious to all of this, or she had more of a mischievous side than she let on. Our hero, taking heed of Jed's advice, shook his head to repress what he just heard. But he continued to follow his mother Walker further to the forest. They walked along the shoreline, watching the sun shimmer on the azure surface. So when do you expect when you'll heal completely? Delia asked, once again motherly instincts taking over. He turned his dual-colored eyes towards the white gauze around him and the sling that his arm resided in, sighing. I don't know, I go to Dr. Eric's clinic every day to get healing therapy from some Pokémon, and, well, it will take me at least a week. Anabel makes sure I don't strain myself, so no battling for me. He sighed again. And once again he saw his mother smile. That gives me more of a reason to like her, she said fondly. This gave Ash an idea. Would you like to meet her? Annabel's a lot more amazing when you actually get to see her, he said with a faint blush rising to his cheeks. This time, he didn't mind it or what it indicated. But to his surprise Delia shook her head. No, not now. I'll wait until you're ready to show everyone. Oh, our hero looked a bit disappointed. But a thought crossed his mind on how he can use this opportunity to his advantage. Well then, I guess. I need to ask you something though. What is it, Ash? You know you can ask me anything. Tell me about girls, he said with all seriousness. Delia's eyes widened and started to avoid her son's eyes. Figures that he would ask that type of question that indicated that he needed the talk that all parents dreaded to talk one day. What's the matter, Mom? He said completely oblivious like he normally was. Delia gulped. Ash, I think it's time I told you about the Pidgeot and the Beedrill. Ash tilted his head in confusion. Why do I need to learn about Pokémon? How do I keep getting into these situations? Pikachu yelled at the top of his lungs, while he, Espeon and Spinda all ran as fast as their legs could take them across the forest ground. Behind them Beedrill were on hot pursuit, with their stingers menacingly pointed straight at them, launching poison jab after the trio. Yeah, how do you get yourself into these things? Espeon yelled at the panicking electric type, referring to the time where he was chased by Beedrill last time he came to the battle tower. Spinda yelled, waving his arms back and forth as though he was actually having fun. Strange part, he was. You're insane. Pikachu screamed at the apparently screwed up panda Pokémon. The blue Spinda gave out a huge grin. Yep. You aren't having fun. No, why would we? Espeon asked this time. The group took a sharp turn to the left in order to avoid an oncoming obstacle. Spinda halted in his tracks as though suddenly realizing that these guys didn't have his taste in fun. Oh, he seemed unaware of the Beedrill gaining up on him. Spinda, get out of there. Pikachu yelled, halting as well. Espeon wasn't as polite. You're in danger, you moron. But it was too late. The Beedrill already were on the attack with Twineedle and Poison Jab ready to puncture the normal type's soft flesh. But they missed when Spinda flopped his face on the ground. In retaliation the Beedrill came back for him. Not only that, but Pikachu and Espeon both were going to try to quick attack the bug types before they could land a hit. But the Spinda just grinned. Pointing a single finger upward he said his attack. Aura Sphere. The blue dots glowed with the power of aura, and on his finger a blue ball shot out and knocked all the bug types down, despite of the type advantage. Pikachu and Espeon halted, completely amazed at the power and the fact that a Spinda used Aura Sphere. They watch as the Beedrill, defeated, retreat to their nest. Spinda waved at them as he watched them go. Bye-bye, he said, almost like he had forgotten that they were trying to attack a few seconds ago. When he turned to the other two Pokémon, both still held the shock look on their faces. What? Spinda asked, feeling a bit uncomfortable with their stares. Pikachu shook his head, trying to get his thoughts together. I don't get it. How is it possible for a Spinda to use Aura Sphere? Actually, that would explain his blue color. Are they? Yes. They are aura anchors. Spinda exclaimed. Normally my kind wouldn't be able to utilize aura, but where I come from, my kind is specially bred to have aura. So, now you can confidently say that you have met the wonderful Spinda, the aura user. The two others' sweat dropped at his erratic attitude. Geez, who the heck is this guy's trainer? Pikachu asked his psychic-type partner. His question was answered surprisingly when a voice called out. Spinda. Where are you, you crazy Pokémon? Through the greenery steeped out Jedstone followed by his Nidoking. Spinda jumped in joy seeing his trainer. Master, look what new friends I made. Of course Jed didn't understand what his Pokémon was saying. But he did see Pikachu and Espeon giving him a curious look. Hey, you're Ash's Pikachu and Anabel's Espeon, right? What are you two doing out here? He asked, picking up his Spinda. Both the Pokémon smirked at each other, finding it fitting that this erratic Spinda belonged to an erratic trainer. Jed sighed. Well, you two have probably already figured out my starter's special move, didn't ya? He smiled when he saw all three nodded. Ah, well. He crouched down to their eye level. I wanted to surprise Ash tomorrow when I challenge him to a battle. You'll keep this a secret, right? He asked the Pokémon with a wink. Pikachu nodded vigorously, excited to what tomorrow might bring. You got it. Oh boy, a battle. Spinda exclaimed, squirming, making it difficult for Jed to hold him. Can't wait. Can't wait. Hey, now settle down. Jed said, firmly placing Spinda on his head. How about you two come along with us? He offered his hands to hold them. The two didn't hesitate, Pikachu hopping on his shoulder and Espeon curling up on his arms. On the side, Nidoking chuckled a bit, his voice sounding a bit rough if not grown up. Hee. You should have let me do this, Jed. I'm a lot stronger than you. To let his trainer know of his intentions, the dual poison ground type offered his arms to carry the other Pokémon. But Jed just shook his head. Nah, I got it, Nidoking. The four Pokémon and the human walked on the path taken by the latter, hopefully leading them all to the open and away from the dangers. The Pokémon said nothing, already exhausted by their latest adventure, and so to ease the quiet, Jed spoke. I'm glad that Ash and Anabel are together. The aura philosopher smiled. It must be a doozy for them, experiencing something like that at their age. It just makes me so happy to see those two happy. He laughed. Sometimes I wonder why I get so excited when people are joyful. I guess you could say that I like a Togekiss. This made the rest of the Pokémon laugh with him. Ash stood with mind blank. Oh, how he wished he still had a mind set to be completely dense to what his mother had just said. But unfortunately that time has passed, his ignorance can no longer save him. So, our hero was at loss for words, nothing could really describe the moment. He couldn't say he regretted asking his mother about girls. But he defiantly didn't expect that speech about things. Well, you asked for it. His mother told him bluntly. She too was not comfortable about the talk, but it was a huge relief off her shoulders now that it was finished. Yeah, but that, I really didn't. Would you rather have Brock tell you about it? His eyes became startled, he clenched his hands. No. Ash said truthfully. It was probably for the best he got the talk now from his mother instead of in the future by someone else. Compared to the awkwardness of that instead of now would probably scar him more than he already was, including about the gender bender scenario about marrying Jed. Guess it was for the best, right? I suppose so. She placed a hand on her son's shoulder. Now then, that done, let us never speak of this again. Agreed. In turn he did hug his mother. It was great seeing you again, Mom. You've been helping me out a lot. Then again, you've always had. Delia smiled and messed up her son's hair. Well, I think it is about time that I put more of an active effort in my son's life. She giggled. Besides, it will be easier now that there is one more woman to look after my little man for me. Like a light bulb, Ash's face burned bright red. Geez, Mom, knock it off. First Anabel makes me blush, now you. But it was all in good humor. Once again, the mother and son waved each other off, glad to see each other once again. And like a trainer and a Pokémon, reuniting with a parent gave off a stronger bond than the last time they saw each other. Well, we're finally out in the open. Jed exclaimed, setting his Pokémon passengers down on the dirt road. Now promise me you won't go getting lost again, right guys? But Pokémon all laughed sheepishly. Spinda turned to the electric type and psychic type. Today was so much fun. I'm glad I was able to meet with you too. Sorry about getting us lost though, I have a bad sense of direction. His little paw rubbed the back of his huge head. It's all right, Spinda. Espeon closed her eyes. There will probably more adventures to come. Pikachu nodded. Yeah, that is if you will continue to hang out with us. Spinda eyes lit up with excitement. Really? Ah, that's really swell. Oh. But not tomorrow. Both Pokémon tilted their heads trying to figure out what he meant. Why? The Spot Panda Pokémon giggled. Have you already forgotten? We're going to battle. With that said, he hopped on his trainer's shoulders. Better be prepared, Pikachu. I'm coming for ya. Alright, see you tomorrow. Pikachu started waving when Jed and Spinda started to go back to the Pokémon Center. Bye bye. What a weird Pokémon. Pikachu said to the Sun Pokémon. Espeon shrugged. Meh. The more the merrier. The sun hung straight above and over the sky, warming the land. Midday wild Pokémon were napping and the tone of the hours turned to a lazy and slow pace. Ash too felt the leisurely pace when he wandered back to the Anabel's cottage, now remembering to make the salon maiden a treat when she got back. His talk with his mother really gave him something to think about that did not involve anything about the Pidgeot and the Beedrill or the gender-bending scenario with Jed, was the fact on how his friends would act when how the relationship will affect his life. Will he stop traveling across the land searching for new competitions? Will it affect his friendships with his other friends? In fact, how would they all react? Hee hee. Ash chuckled while he prepared a meal. They would probably be all surprised by this. He said to himself. He heard a noise coming from the front, and saw Pikachu and Espeon dragging their paws across the carpet. You guys seem bushed. Rough day? He asked the two unique starters. Esp. Pika Pika, came their tired replies. Both slumped near his feet and sighed. Out of sympathy, Ash picked both up and carried them to a nearby chair. Both of the Pokémon sighed in relief, causing the trainer to chuckle again. How about I get you guys something to eat? He petted their heads and went to the front of the house where Anabel usually kept the Pokémon food. But before he could come back in the house, another visitor appeared who shocked Ash seeing who it was. Hello boy. Ash nearly dropped the bowls of Pokémon food he was carrying. Brandon, he exclaimed. The elder man nodded, still sporting the same bored look and intense stare he had at the Saffron conference. What are you doing here? It wasn't that Brandon's presence wasn't welcome, but it wasn't exactly common for the ruins expert to commingle without an important reason. I went to see Anabel. He answered bluntly as though it was obvious. Ash looked even more surprised that such a statement came from Brandon. This didn't escape the Pyramid King's notice. What's the matter, boy? Can a teacher not visit his student when he feels like it? Or do you really think I am that stern of a man who gives no affection to those he's grown to care about? Oh no. I didn't mean to offend you, sir. He stopped when Brandon looked obviously annoyed with his rambling. It's good to see you restored back to your normal state, he said as to change the subject. Ash looked at his injured state confused. As far as Ash was concerned, having an arm in a sling and having your torso wrapped in bandages doesn't really qualify as normal. Brandon. I'm still healing from the hyper beams, he said, gesturing to his bandages. I didn't indicate anything about your physical self. He tapped on his forehead, showing what he was talking about. You seem to have snuffed out the last of the effect of the evil king of Pokelantis. You have regained the fire of battle back and seem to have grown much stronger within yourself and with your Pokemon. Brandon took the bowls of Pokemon food from the younger boy. Come, let's go inside and help ourselves to some tea. Inside, Pikachu and Espeon snaked on their treat while the two humans sat on the table with the steaming cups of what was apparently everyone's favorite drink. So how goes your progress with becoming a frontier brain? The elder asked. Ash's visible amber eye glowed with the warm memories of experience he has been having at the battle tower. Great. Anabel's a great teacher. I have been learning so much, and not just about battling. He grinned. I've been learning about people, Pokemon, and the other duties about being a battle brain. Brandon nodded, approving. Good. No longer you seem like the boy with a single-tracked mind that I battled a year ago. You have developed a wild look that speaks of experience and determination that is only achieved by knowledge. Ash accepted this rare comment with good grace. Thank you, but I still have a long way to go. Brandon nodded. And admitting that is the first step towards your goal. I assume that Anabel has told you her story about meeting me. Ash cringed a bit, sympathizing with Anabel's younger self having to battle this fierce man who he himself knew firsthand of the elder's lack of mercy in battle. Yeah, how was it like training her to become a frontier brain? A look of nostalgia came across the ruins expert's face, a look that Ash never thought he would see on the elder. She was dedicated, and yet very confused. Brandon said before taking another sip of his tea. Apparently from her past, she never got to interact much with humans. Talking with Pokémon came more naturally to her than anything else. It has always made me wonder what events in her life made her that way. A small dash of sadness crossed his eyes. As you can tell, her bond with Pokémon grows more strongly every passing year. My time with her was spent less on battling but more on giving her what she really needed. Ash titled his head. What was that? A family. The Pyramid King saw the befuddled look and sigh. Anabel needed to know how to bond with human like she did, as it is critical for a battle brain to communicate with both sides. I took her to the other brains, where she trained with each of them for a week and eventually she became more open with people and began to actively pursue getting to know battlers. This he smiled slightly. It is because of this reason why she is the second most powerful of us all. They stayed silent for a while, for Ash to digest what he just heard. More and more was Anabel's past revealed to him. The more he heard, the more he came to realize that she was different from him. But that was okay. It was great knowing more about the girl he really liked. After a while Brandon spoke up. It seems to me that you two have developed a close bond with each other, one that goes beyond simple friendship. This was the second time someone has rightly accused him of liking Anabel, and though he was a bit more prepared, it still surprised him that people could figure it out so easily. Geez, oh Pete, first my mom, now you. Is it really that obvious? He asked with his face blushing red once again and his arm scratching the back of his head. Brandon shrugged. Not to the common person. As like your mother is close to you, I am close to Anabel and I have stated the same thing to her. And she told the truth as to be expected. He took one last swing of tea before looking at Ash with a very intense stare. One that was akin to almost a glare. Now listen here, Ash. Out of reflexes Ash gulped. Yeess. It was like staring at the eyes of legendary with this man. Though we are not biologically related, Anabel and I share the relationship of father and daughter. I care about her dearly. He stood up, leaning a bit closer, causing Ash to lean back on his chair. Now listen here, young man, though I know you have a good heart, I will make you life very difficult if you hurt Anabel's heart, you understand, Ash? It wasn't a question, it was a fact. Yes, sir. Ash said, trying to keep his voice calm. All this romance stuff is serious business. He thought before finding his voice again. I never even thought of harming her, sir. He added that at the end to show respect. The Pyramid King cast one last glance towards the young trainer to see if he was telling the truth. Very well, Ash. He stood up to take a leave, but looked over his shoulder one last time. I expect you to make much more progress by the end of your training, both in terms of physical, mentally, and in a relationship. No reply came when Brandon left, and once he was out of sight, the ruins expert dialed a number on the phone. Hello. You're Scott's newest secretary. Yes, I'll leave a message. Tell him that it was before the 3 months were up and I won. No, he'll understand what I meant. Ash waited, with 2 fruit shakes that he made for the salon maiden and him, and wondered where she was. But he understood that she could still be busy. Waiting, he was reading some books about different region, from Kanto to Sinnoh and all the islands in between, and even discovered about another land called Or that held no native Pokémon. Ash couldn't imagine living in such a desolate place. And when he was about to turn to the U section of the book, Anabel came in holding something. Ashes got up immediately, seeing what it was. Is that a Pokémon egg? How did you get that? He asked. Anabel looked proudly at the shell that held life. It was orange with black spots and white spots with a blue spot right on the top. Brandon came in today and gave it to me as a gift. He said it would remind me of my home, but I have no idea what he means by that. Your home? Ash asked, quizzled. Oh, I guess I never told you. Anabel looked mildly surprised. I'm not from Kanto. Oh. Ash looked very surprised at this news. So where are you from? He asked, suddenly very excited to know where she was from. Was she from Sinnoh? No, maybe from Hoenn since she has a Metagross. Anabel went to the table, recognizing the book he was reading before she came in. I came from a very far away land. She said, turning the page. Ash saw that it was another region entirely, one that he never heard of before. I come from the region of Unova. You can only reach it by plane or boat and it takes at least several days to get there. What's it like there? He asked. Well, it's pretty advanced and it contains a whole new spectrum of Pokémon. In fact, Pikachu would actually be considered very rare there. Really? Ash was excited now. A whole new region full of Pokémon that have never been seen before. That's awesome. I would love to go there sometime. Anabel gave him a smile but seemed to be a bit sad at the same time. Well, I wouldn't stop you from it. It would be better if you came with me, he said suddenly, his face once again blushing. He still wasn't used to the fact that everything he said to Anabel seemed to mean a bit more. Oh, thanks Ash. But I haven't been there in a long time, in fact I never entered the league. I wouldn't be much help. She laughing a bit at that fact. All the more reason why we should travel together. Ash said, not giving up the fact that it would be so much fun to travel with Anabel. His positive attitude was contagious as Anabel too soon found herself grinning. That would sound a lot of fun. Alright. We'll go after the battle frontier is finished. We'll go to Unova together. Another promise for another time. One that neither intend to break. Showing the strength of this developing relationship that both had to offer.